think I might kick off. What do you think, ladies? Shall we do it?
Do it.
Let's do it. All righty. So I'm going to start this the way that I think is very important to start this. I would like to begin by acknowledging and paying my respects to the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered today, or certainly I am gathered today because I'm in Melbourne. I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And welcome to another Girls in Tech virtual Girl Boss Night. My name is Karen Katz. In the Girls in Tech community, I'm known affectionately as Mama Katz. I enjoy the privilege of sitting on the board of Girls in Tech Australia, a not-for-profit organisation which is run by passionate employees, passionate volunteers, committed to the empowerment, network building and education of women in STEM. We run a number of events throughout the year, both virtually and in person across Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, with a view to grow to other states if any of you would like to chat to me afterwards. Our premier event of the year will actually be held next month, in person in Melbourne and virtually for anyone who can't be here with us. It is the pinnacle event of our year, full of relevant learning. This year, our theme is Tech Imagined. What's our role in the future of the internet? We will have a number of incredible keynotes, panels, our great debate, and a range of workshops where you can hone your learning to your area of interest. If there is something that you hear tonight that you believe is inspirational, interesting, hilariously funny, or you have your traditional wine and cheese at hand, please share it online. Your hashtags are GirlBossNight, hashtag GirlBossNight, hashtag GirlsInTechAU. We'll actually be scouring socials after the event, and one lucky poster will receive a ticket to our conference, which we will announce after we close tonight. So post away and let the world know what you've learned from these incredible women. We can actually only run with the support of organisations that sponsor our events. And tonight we thank our friends at Atlassian for supporting this Girl Boss Night. Thank you all for joining tonight's very relevant and timely discussion about imposter syndrome and how our amazing panel members stood up to and overcame imposter syndrome in their careers. I'm honoured to be joined by three incredible women tonight who I would like to introduce you to now. Alex McCulloch, I'm going to make Alex wave, is a software developer at Atlassian and also the coordinator of the Girls Programming Network in Sydney. Atlassian make tools like Jira and Trello that are used by thousands of teams worldwide. They pride themselves on creating amazing products and practices to unleash the potential of teams everywhere. Cherie Clonan describes herself as the proudly autistic founding creative director at the Digital Picnic. You totally didn't wave when I said your name. There we go. The Digital Picnic provides digital marketing training to businesses all over Australia. Cherie is proud to be the disruptor of her industry, making the world a better place for neurodivergence by designing a humanistic and encouraging workplace with servant leadership at the heart of everything she does. Liz Douglas, see, on cue, is a qualified aerospace engineer. Her career has seen her progress to becoming a partner at Deloitte, where she created the modern systems engineering offering, which has helped improve client delivery and has enabled them to respond faster to the changing expectations of her customers. As you can see, I'm in pretty impressive company tonight. So, what do we mean when we talk about imposter syndrome? And more importantly, why do we let it interfere with our career trajectory? When preparing for tonight, I consulted the Encyclopedia of Google and found so many different interpretations and meanings, but I have settled on this one. Imposter syndrome refers to an internal experience of believing that you are not as competent as others perceive you to be. Very simply, you feel like a phony. You feel as though at any minute, you are going to be found out as a fraud, like you don't belong where you are and you only got there through dumb luck. It can affect anyone, no matter their social status, work background, skill level, or degree of expertise. So, imposter syndrome comes down to how you feel about yourself. STEMwomen.com says that when we look at environments where there are gender imbalances or people who feel that they are in the minority, feelings of imposter syndrome are bound to be more prevalent. When we relate to that to women who are predominantly feeling driven, in a technical environment where they are in a distinct minority and they are battling against gender biases and prejudices, you can see why this is a challenge for so many. This is not to say that men do not encounter imposter syndrome. It does, however, say that women are more likely to suffer from it, and usually they do this silently and don't voice their fears to others. So I could bang on about this for hours, but you didn't tune in to hear me drone on. I'd like to open by asking each of our panelists to tell us a little about their career trajectory and what inspired them to embark on a career in the digital technology space. Alex, I'm handing to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I'm a software developer at Atlassian. I've been at Atlassian for about 3 years now. I guess my STEM journey, it's a fairly happy one. I did a software course in high school. I went to an all-girls school and our IT classroom was about the size of a storage cupboard. But those of us who were in it were really excited about it. And our teacher was amazing, and she really inspired me to go after programming when she realized that I was into it. So she referred me to go to the National Computer Science Summer School, which is a 10-day residential camp at UCID, which really sparked everything for me. That was the point at which I realized that there were other people that were into programming who looked like me, who I could relate to, who weren't scary men in dark rooms in hoodies hacking or doing something crazy like that. So that was my first experience of feeling like I kind of belonged in a tech space. From there, I went to the University of Sydney because of that experience. I did a Bachelor of Computer Science. While I was there, I volunteered a lot for the Girls Programming Network, which aims at bringing more girls into programming, teaching them programming, and also mentoring young tutors, which is what I was at the time. So yeah, I found a real community there, which really helped me out. And then I applied to Atlassian as an intern, as a grad, got in, and that's most of my story.
Fantastic. So it's really good to hear that there was a teacher that actually encouraged you and pushed you in a direction that's clearly working well for you.
Yeah.
Cherie, tell us your story.
Hi, Mama Cats. I'm still reflecting on you discussing Romper Room, because I was actually on Romper Room when I was, I think, 5 or 6 years old. So cool. Very excited, very nostalgic. Dad's also nodding his head. So yeah, I guess for me, I didn't start in sort of digital marketing. Obviously, it just didn't exist at all. My industry literally didn't exist when I was even in high school or towards the later stages. But as soon as it did exist in my little world, so I was 14 years old when we had the internet arrive, for us as a little family in Melbourne. And that was it for me. I just knew straight away that I had to be a part of this world, and I very much so immersed myself in that world. And, I was completely obsessed with everything. I was just everything to do with, online, internet, communications, online communities, and so on. So I was hanging out in, Yahoo chat rooms and practicing French with French folk, just really innocent sort of stuff. And yeah, I don't want to stereotype autistics, because it is genuinely a spectrum. But for me, my, journey as an autistic woman is that I was that sort of typical autistic kid that didn't have a lot of friends in school, hung out in the library at lunchtime, got sort of grade skipped up a year level. And so as a result, I graduated from high school when I was 16, just about to turn 17. And I just think that's too young to pick what you really want to do in your life. So Dad picked it for me, and I studied law, which I hated every day of that 1-year degree. I hated it so much. And so I dropped out 1 year in. And now ended up in digital marketing, which is where I was always meant to be. I'm a very creative kind of autistic. Don't even talk to me about maths. That's for Sheldon, not me. I don't understand maths. I'm just, I love creativity. And so I guess the element of technology that I've ended up in requires a lot of creativity, and I get to flex that on the daily. And I absolutely love my job and, the people that I employ. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Law. My dad would have loved me to be a lawyer. He was a lawyer. I could think of nothing worse. No offense there, Dad. Liz, tell us about you and your career.
Awesome. Well, it's great to hear. The one thing that I love about digital and about technology is that you get people from all sorts of backgrounds, and and I'm no different. So when I was at school, I had a friend called Alistair, whose dad was an airline pilot. And Alistair knew from, I don't know, maybe the day he was born, that he was going to be an airline pilot. And so he was, pushed very much to head off to flying school when he turned 16. And I was like, this is so cool. And I literally begged my parents to send me to flying school, and bless them, because they did. And so my first sort of foray into something of a career path was going to flying school every weekend while I was still at high school. And I actually learnt to fly before I could drive a car, which was quite fun, although you still have to get to the airport, which still relies on your parents. But when I was coming to the end of completing high school, my very conservative parents were worried that I wouldn't go to university, and so wanted me to do something at university. They didn't care what; it just had to have a degree behind it. And I don't know. My dad's an engineer. I was always okay with maths and things like that, so it was sort of natural for me to choose aerospace engineering. So off I went. And I loved it. We got to make rockets and stand in wind tunnels and do all sorts of crazy things. And I ended up realizing that the interesting part was designing the airplanes, not actually just operating them. So I worked in aerospace and worked on programs like the Joint Strike Fighter, which is now being decommissioned, which is sad. That makes me feel old. And did that for a number of years, and ended up gravitating towards groups who were writing software for engineers to use in their day-to-day work. And that was what led me into becoming a programmer. And I switched over to a consultancy and worked as a software engineer for a number of years, and then decided that I wanted to get more into leading technology teams, and worked in a number of corporates around Australia. And then realized that there's some ways of working and some patterns of how we transform organizations that I wanted to have more of an impact on, doing that at scale, because I think there's only one of me, and I would like to not have to work in every single corporate in Australia personally to help them. And that was how I ended up coming over to Deloitte, and have started, as Kate described in her, as Karen described in her intro, launching a new offering here at Deloitte, which I've been here for 2 years. So
fantastic. I'm still stuck on the fact that you were flying before you were driving. That's just fantastic for me. I don't mind a bit of an aeroplane, so that's pretty cool. Do you miss it?
It's a lot of fun, but you have to live in some pretty crazy places if you want to pursue that as a career.
Very true. Very, very true. So, Alex, you are clearly very passionate about software development and work at a company that is coveted by quite a few people. When you were looking for a job, at any stage, did you have any thoughts that maybe you shouldn't apply?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't going to apply for Atlassian. It was just not even on my radar. I had heard of Atlassian through the NCSS and GPN stuff that I had done. They were a sponsor of that. I'd been on site tours to Atlassian. I knew of people who went to Atlassian. I was like, they're amazing. They're these like top tier developers. This is an incredible company. I could never work there. And so I wasn't even going to apply. And a recruiter called Rachel, reached out to me on LinkedIn because she had seen, I have one here, thank you. She had seen what I had done for GPN, and she reached out to me and said, hey, you seem like you are really passionate about, getting girls into tech, and you seem like the exact kind of person that we'd love to have on our team. You should really apply for our internship. And I thought that was amazing. I was like, you think I should apply? That's incredible. So I ummed and ahed about it, and my fantastic partner was like, just do it. Like, what's the worst that could possibly happen? Give it a go. If you're no good, they'll work it out. Don't count yourself out. So I was like, okay, great. So at every single interview stage, I was like, are you sure? You want me to do the next one? Are you sure? Okay, I guess I'll do the next interview. And then they kept saying yes, and they kept saying yes. And then they hired me. And I was like, are you sure? And they're like, yes, no, we really want to hire you. And I got in. And that was, it was incredible.
So it was the support of other people telling you that you could?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a major thing, is having people that believe in you and who back you. Having that support network behind you really even if you are still feeling those imposter syndrome feelings, like I still feel them to this day, but I have so many incredible people who care about me, who know me sometimes better than I know myself, and are like, you've totally got this, like just go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very similar for myself when I started my company. I was, okay, can I say shitting myself? Yeah, I can. Absolutely. And it was my husband who's like, you can, we'll get, we can make this happen. You can. So the support of people around us who love us is clearly very important in helping us get over. Whose husband locked the dogs in the study? Right. Cherie, you started your very own company from scratch. What inspired you to do that? And did you have any doubts along the way?
Yeah, so I think what I'll share with you now is probably going to sound like the opposite of imposter syndrome. So I hope that it just resonates with anyone here tonight. But obviously, after I dropped out of law, which, by the way, I dropped out when we got to law of torts. If anyone has ever come across law of torts, that'll do it. I was like, oh, wow, we are out. And yeah, so that was it. So I dropped out and then made my way into marketing and studied that formally. And I remember sitting in the relevant tertiary qualification and, sort of similar to what Liz said, having that degree, behind you. And I just remember, and I probably honestly, on reflection, probably did the heads in of some of my lecturers and, and so on, because I was like, this is outdated information. Like you can literally see, and they said, of course, but like, just respect the theoretical foundations, which I do honestly so much. And I'm so grateful I had the privilege of that education. But I just know that an industry like digital marketing moves so fast that by the time that it made its way to, curriculum for an Australian university in digital marketing, it's sort of already outdated, and so for me, I actually remember vividly sitting in a particular lecture, and I thought, one day I'm going to own a business like the Digital Picnic, and I'm going to overcome the problem of, information being outdated by the time it's presented, because because it's not the university's fault. They do the important job of laying down all important theoretical foundations, but they just can't keep up from a practical, like, this is how fast this, this industry moves. And so that was the moment for me. I remember, obviously graduating from that and moving on to like a $5,000 course that was pitched at being like the bridging of the gaps between finishing uni and trying to enter digital marketing and learning the practical somethings. And again, I sat in that one with a presenter who was just so uninspiring and didn't want to be there and didn't make that not known or felt. And again, I just knew then, even louder, it was just saying to me, you've got to do this, Cherie, you've got to, get out there. And of course, there's imposter syndrome, and then it's just recognizing that you don't have the experience that you need. So I made sure that I spent a solid sort of decade, in the industry, clocking up the experience. But the minute I felt like I was ready, I did, start the Digital Picnic. And now I'm really happy to say, as a beautiful 360, in case this resonates with anyone here tonight, we are now appointed by almost every Australian university to work with them on, getting that curriculum up to date. And it's just never not the most surreal moment to me to play that role in working on their strategies. And I just remember being the kid, the annoying one who said, this is outdated, and trust the autistic. I'm like, this is not accurate, and now I get to make the curriculum. And I never don't pinch myself. I just can't, believe it. So I don't mean to sit on a panel and talk about overcoming imposter syndrome by admitting that I actually had the opposite feeling, where I was like, I could do better than this, but I promise the impostery moments, they've definitely been there at different scattered moments throughout my whole, company ownership sort of career. So they're there. I promise. It just wasn't there in that moment particularly. Yeah.
Fair enough too. We don't expect nor want anyone to have to suffer more imposter syndrome than that is necessary. I don't even think it's necessary, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, but no, we're very proud of what you've achieved, and I can tell lots and lots of stories about how you and I connected originally. But we'll leave that till a bit later. A bit of mystery in the room. Liz, you've enjoyed a very successful tech career. Were there any points along the way where you thought you weren't good enough or you couldn't achieve the next step?
Yes. I
There you
can
go.
remember maybe one or two. No, I'm joking. Like hundreds, like all of the time, right? And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that. I think it's not something that exists only in people's minds. It's also the signals which are given to people. And, you know, we've heard already in this conversation that sometimes people are given reinforcing messages like, you can do it, that's great, and that's awesome. That is not always the case, right? And I've certainly been given my share of messages that tell me that I don't belong either, to the point where I was once uninvited from a meetup that I was actually speaking at because they just assumed that I must have been in the wrong room. So, you know, I think unfortunately that sort of thing does happen to a lot of women in tech, and I hope that that changes generationally, and I really hope that we're not sitting around this sort of forum in the next decade and having to have that same conversation. But yes, absolutely. I mean, I've changed careers and gone into a profession that I'm completely unqualified for even. So I certainly have had lots of moments where I've looked across at, you know, people who I would consider peers who seem to have just been doing everything since they were age 8, and not knowing the first thing that I should be typing. So I think it's a case of, in some ways, giving you that energy to put your head down and learn quickly and keep on improving, and making sure that you are grounding yourself as well at the same time.
So it's interesting you say that, you know, you weren't qualified for, yet a group of your peers, because partnership at Deloitte is not something that just lands in your lap because you happen to be in the right place at the right time. So there are a number of people who do believe you're qualified. So it's interesting that you say that you feel you're not.
Right, not officially qualified, I'm going to say. Yeah. I mean, I never studied anything to do with IT or technology in that sort of digital regard, and yet that's the skill set that I would now say that I have, much more than I would say I have an aerospace sort of skill set.
I guess it comes back to what we were talking about with Alex before in terms of the teacher recognizing. I mean, someone has recognized that you are clearly very good at what you do, and in their eyes, very qualified to be able to deliver in that environment.
Right. Yeah, right. And I think, look, I think one of the reflections that I would have, now that I have almost all grey hair that I have to dye brown, is that you do build up a collection of capabilities and skills and experiences, right, which all accumulate, and you can adapt those into lots of different contexts, and that's incredibly valuable. So I think valuing and going back to what do I have to bring to this particular scenario, or what experience can I draw something from, is often a good base to start unpuzzling yourself when you do get in those moments where you think, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm really at sea here.
It's really about value what I have, not worry about what I don't.
Right.
In my humble opinion, which is highly humble, I can assure you. I'm actually interested in an answer from all our panelists around that there's been a lot of work from primary school upward to encourage girls into STEM careers, as Alex had talked to earlier. However, at present, less than 20% of the population of most tertiary or further study courses in technology are women. In your opinion, why do you think this is? And you're on my screen, Liz, so I'm going to throw to you first.
Again, Karen, this is one of the conversations that I hope we don't have to have into the future.
Yeah.
I really do hope that that's the case. Do you know, interestingly, I never even thought that I was going into a STEM career. I thought I was just doing the thing that was interesting. So actually, I think you do need somebody who gives you that inspiration. For me, it was my dad, because he was an engineer, and so it was normal for me to be doing the sorts of engineering things that he was doing on the weekends. And it sounds like Alex had somebody that inspired her as well. So it's I think it's more about just showing options to everybody. And then also, one of the things that I'm encouraged by is that, you know, we're less gender typed in how we direct people now, certainly than I was when I was young. And that's a great thing, because I think that breaks down a barrier as well.
Absolutely. Alex, what are your thoughts?
So I think that, having that, like a community or a specific person who's driving you is really important. But everyone saying that is a little bit boring, so I'll pick something else. So I remember when I was in my degree, which is a Bachelor of Computer Science, I had come from an all-girls school, landed in this degree. There were more international students doing my degree than there were girls, which was like my first indicator of we're not in Kansas anymore. And so that switch is very difficult of being like, oh, I'm actually a minority here and I've never been a minority before. So that's interesting. So having more support around that, I think, helps. But also I remember I had done programming before, and a lot of the girls in our year hadn't done programming before, but a lot of the boys had. So a lot of the course that we did, even our intro to programming, was more about stretching the students that had done some before rather than supporting the students that were new. And I still see that today. Like I remember talking to someone about the new University of Sydney. They changed the intro to programming from Java to Python, which I think is great. I love teaching Python. It's so much more intuitive to new programmers. But because they had switched to something more intuitive, they had condensed the course so they could do more advanced stuff. And I was like, you've gone the wrong way. You've done a good thing and then you've undone it by squishing it down. So I think that having a little bit more understanding that a lot of people who come into computer science, they do know some programming, but so many, especially the girls, don't. And so having those spaces where they can either upskill outside of the university courses or have university courses that are a little bit more beginner friendly, because there are no prereqs to those university courses. You don't need to know programming to do them. So yeah, that's my 2 cents of let's stop scaring all the girls away with this crazy amount of programming in the first 3 months.
What do you find? So Cherie, I'm asking the question to you. I'm also interested because you've got that digital marketing bent and you are involved with the universities. Talk me through your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I still, sadly, like all the panelists have sort of touched on tonight, think there is a lack of representation, and I think we all need to see, ourselves represented in some way, shape or form, whatever it is in life, but for the purposes of the discussion tonight, like I just think there is a lack of representation. And even I know this dates back to high school, and I know I was a romper room baby, so it really does date back. And but for a STEM program at my school, which was circa 1980s, early 90s, they had a STEM program, but you had to sit a series of exams to be selected for it. And I was one of 2 girls selected, and it was hell on earth. And I dropped out. I was bullied. Every time I gave an answer, it was just hell on earth. And I hated it so much. And if I knew what I knew now, I'd probably go back and do everything so differently. But I just, it felt really intimidating walking in and only seeing myself and one other girl. So I hope that it's going to change a lot. I can see now that I'm, a mother to 2 children. I see my daughter just smashing it already in grade 3, and I'm excited. But yeah, absolutely, working with universities, I still see that 20% statistic flying around. It is absolutely there. It exists, and I hope it really changes. But I think we're going to need to see ourselves represented a lot more to feel like there's a place for us, there. And I think in order to get there, we've got a long way to go, and it will take incredible organizational leaders, to help get us there. But until then, now if I think about dropping out like I did, and I'm not going to say I did it lightly, like there was one particular day, I hope this doesn't trigger anyone, I'm going to talk about bullying just quickly, but there was one particular day, I had this one session in this STEM class that I was in, and it was one of the most incredible sessions. I learned so much and I knew a lot too, and I was loving it. My soul was on fire, and I was answering the questions, and I was so excited, and I thought it was just the most incredible class session. And then afterwards I got pulled aside and by male peers within the class, and they broke my arm, and that was the day that I dropped out of the program. It was devastating. I walked home, my dad was mowing a lawn, and I just remember it so vividly. He's here now, next to me, and I just said, Dad, I never want to go into that program again, but now I watch my daughter and I just use such different language. Like I'm like, take up space, and you're so passionate about this, so just do it, and don't you let anyone tell you. And I'm just, it's so nice to be able to, you know, just change sort of what your story might have been through your own children. It's been such a healing experience to watch Frankie Jean Clonan dominate in STEM. And I just feel like a really proud mum seeing her do that. So I can honestly touch on being very, you know, very heavily impacted by my own experiences in that space. And I think it is genuinely a lack of representation. I think I would have felt a lot more confident if 50% at least of my class were female. Yeah.
I have to say, I'm devastated to hear what it is that you went through, but that you've turned it into something so positive for the next generation. You really should be applauded for that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to use take up space quite a bit now. That's going to be my thing.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, I would tell my oldest to take up space, but she's already taking it, let me tell you. But that's a story for another time as well. Thank you for that. Alex, in your career so far, what efforts have you seen your workplace embark upon in order to encourage women to turn the dial 180 degrees and apply for graduate jobs without feeling like they can't do it or it's beyond their reach?
Yeah, so Atlassian has a really great grad program. I benefited so much from it. You come in with this like massive cohort, and you end up having so many bonds with all of these different graduates. And I remember when I was a grad, I was like, I know nothing and I don't know what I'm doing. And it's been 2 weeks and I haven't written a single line of code. Is that okay? Am I failing already? And all the other grads that you have are all doing the exact same thing. You all have these meetups where you talk about it and you're like, yeah, no one's written a line of code. It's fine. You've got this great mentoring set up between you on the same level. And then obviously in your team, you have mentors as well. Every new hire, whether you're a grad or an intern, has a mentor in your team and outside of your team. So Atlassian does a really good job once you land of making sure that you feel like you're here, we've got you, you're going to be fine no matter what happens, which is just incredible. And we do a lot of outreach with campus and such. And so they also support the Girls Programming Network, which I tutor at and help run. And as part of GPN, we have this like full pipeline approach, we call it, where we've got the high school girls, but we also have the tutors. And a lot of them, like I said, are these uni students. And a lot of the point of GPN is to make this like community that's really like strong and supportive. And so you'll have uni students and you'll chat to them and you'll be like, oh, you're graduating this year. Have you applied to any positions? And they're, you know, unsure. And there's this great community of like, oh, you should apply to Atlassian, you should apply to WiseTech, you should apply to wherever. Every tutor that is in an industry is, you know, pitching their company and being like, you can do it, like, let's go. This is what my company's like. It's going to be amazing. Come to Atlassian and all of these things. So I think all of those different things that either inside Atlassian or outside Atlassian, there's like a lot going on of like companies that, you know, Atlassian supports or not-for-profits Atlassian supports and all of that. So I think there's a lot going on that is trying to move us away from this whole thing of like, I'm not good enough, and into this kind of more supportive, community-driven world. Yeah.
It's fantastic to have that support from your organization. Because, you know, it's always sort of been one of those pinnacle places. It's nice to hear that it actually delivers on the stuff that is so important to us as women in technology. That's awesome. Yeah. Young Cherie, you created this incredibly inclusive business in the Digital Picnic. Can you please talk us through your motivation for doing so and what you've done to create the culture and how you've seen it permeate and grow?
Yeah, this is so hard because, like, you know, probably similarly to Liz, you know, I don't know, sometimes I just feel like as TDP's organisational leader, there's a lot of really great things that we have going on, and I only know this because our community tells us, but it doesn't ever feel like that for me. You know, I just feel like we're just doing what we're meant to do as human beings, right? Like celebrating human beings and inviting them into our workplace and celebrating them for the whole human beings that they are. And I guess for me, diversity is just so important. I just can't imagine TDP existing without, you know, just having a really diverse workplace. I just think that a workplace should reflect what our real world looks like that we live in, you know. And I've seen organizations, you know, ruined by a lack of diversity, you know. So even to throw it away from professional for a minute, but in the school setting, we've pulled our both of our children out of a particular school because it just honestly lacked diversity, and that's dangerous. I'm going to go as far as saying it's dangerous when you don't have diversity within your organization. And the school began as just something really incredible and multicultural and inclusive and celebratory, but there was a change of leadership. And then before we knew it, I looked around and I was like, this is entirely Anglo. There is a lack of diversity. There are no more, like, just there were so many problems. And so I remember that experience, and I remember thinking, I hope that never happens, and it won't within my workplace for as long as I'm at the helm. You know, you've got to have diversity. You've got to have different people from different walks of life, you know, with different lived experiences contributing, you know, to a better workplace, because with a whole series of different lived experiences, someone will be able to interpret something that makes sense to them, you know, and explain it within a workplace and make the really easy and necessary different accommodations that we all need, you know. So for me, it's just simple things like the policies that you design, you know. Who cares for me about Melbourne Cup and a bunch of horses running around a track, you know? So of course, off the back of that, I thought, we've got to have public holiday pivots so that people can pick days that matter to them far more, like religious holidays that matter to them that I'm not aware of, you know, as a fairly agnostic, you know, human being. But I respect every religion, you know. So for me, I feel more passionate about some of the religious holidays that my employees celebrate than a bunch of horses running around a racing track, you know. And, you know, we've developed trans positive inclusion policies because we have, you know, trans employees who just continue to have incredibly courageous conversations within our workplace. And they've taught me so much more about being an ally to trans, you know, persons. And so I just feel like with every, you know, diverse hire that we make, we get 75% better as an organization. So why wouldn't you, you know? And yeah, I just want to keep heading in, you know, keep doing what we're doing because it feels really good. And I guess for me, you know, I think that maybe it comes easier for me because they say, you know, they don't say I live this experience as an autistic person. A lot of autistics have special interests. I don't know if we have any autistic people in the room, in the virtual room tonight, but we develop special interests, you know, and they're pretty intense, I will say. And so for me as a kid growing up, my special interest was cicadas, unfortunately, for my poor dad who had to trek through the Blue Mountains bushes on scaling cliff walls to find this rare black prince. But we found it. And thankfully for me now, I'm 39 now, I'm not looking in the depths of the Blue Mountains for a really rare cicada. But my new special interest, and it's been for as long as I've been an organizational leader, is people. I'm just so intensely interested in people. So I think that that's one of my special little skills that I bring as an organizational, you know, leader to the digital picnic. And I love people, and I just want to learn more and more about them and celebrate the living bejeebers out of them in my workplace so that they feel really safe and seen and celebrated and accommodated for.
I bet your workplace turnover is tiny.
It is tiny. So they pretty much leave to have children. Or, you know, a new program that we're rolling out where it's a sabbatical. If you want to explore like a side hustle or something like that, take a sabbatical, we'll pay for it, you know, and just see if you come back. And if your side hustle expands, we'll celebrate that online. So the turnover is low, but, you know, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect workplace, but I just know that if an organizational leader loves people as intensely as I do, that's surely just going to keep having really great ripple effects within senior leadership teams and leadership teams and pretty much hopefully anyone that walks into the workplace. Yeah.
I'd like a job when we're finished talking.
We'll talk.
If you don't mind. Liz, you've worked for a number of larger organisations who would highlight the efforts that they're making in the area of diversity. Are there any particular programs that you believe that work better than others, and why would you suggest that they might?
Yeah, look, I think we've touched on, you know, the efforts which I think are going into people who are entering into the workforce, and that's fantastic. And, you know, talent is harder to come by than ever. now. So I think it's great that organisations are putting in that effort to, in particular, to a more diverse workforce, but more generally into helping support people into STEM careers more than they have perhaps historically as well. So that's great. The other program format which I've seen work really well is encouraging women who maybe have had a career break for whatever purpose to return into the workforce. Those programs do surface people who, you know, have got some terrific experience and some great life experience as well, and are really eager to get back into something that's really fulfilling. So some of those programs are absolutely wonderful. And I think we're now in an era where we're much more likely to support real world sort of needs for people as well, right? The policies are much more refined. Deloitte, in fact, just announced recently some policies around things like miscarriage leave. So I think, you know, those sorts of things really help to acknowledge that, you know, life is happening to all of us outside of our work day, and the more that we can support people in that way, I think absolutely the better.
I love the shift in the dial in recognising the women who have taken the career break, you know, if it's to have children or whatever other reason they might, and valuing the experience that they have,
yeah,
and targeting. I think that's fantastic. You know, it's nice to see that dial shifting a little at a time, and it is a little, but it's actually nice to see that it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
I would actually love to understand from all of you, if you had a chance to chat to your younger self about how it is that you would have dealt with those feelings of imposter syndrome, how might you have done it differently looking back on when you faced it? Alex, your younger self.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'd love to tell like 16, 17-year-old Alex is just breathe. Babe, like just breathe. It's all gonna be okay. I tend to be a very anxious person. I want to make sure that everything is controlled and that I know exactly what everything is gonna do. And it's just like, babe, sometimes you just gotta let it be. And the way it be, it's just gonna happen and it's gonna be all right no matter what it is. Yeah, so just imparting a little bit of slow, calm down. It's gonna be all right. You're gonna make it. Whatever happens, it may not turn out the way that you think that it might, but that's all right too. And maybe it does turn out even better than you think, and that's great too. And being open to all of the possibilities and not having to know exactly where you're going all of the time. I was going to do an honors year, for example, and I got so fixated in my mind that I had to do an honors year and that it was really very important that I do this honors year. And it was freaking me out because I really didn't like university very much. It wasn't really my place. And I was getting myself twisted in knots about the fact that I felt like I had to do this honor year. And until like I sat myself down and I made this giant pros and cons list, which is, you know, one of the ways that my brain likes to organize information and control things. But I sat down, I was just like trying to come up with any pros at all to doing the honors list that wasn't, I think I should. I was like, maybe that's not enough. Maybe that's not a good enough reason to do this thing that I don't want to do. Maybe I actually need to let that one go and switch path and figure out where I actually want to go. And so, yeah, breathe and just let the road take you where it's going to go. You don't have to control every single bit. It's not all that important. You can just walk the path. You don't need to sprint it. So
I like it. That's awesome. Just breathe. Something I would probably tell my children more often. Just breathe.
Yeah.
Take a load off.
Just breathe. All right. It's all going to be okay.
That's awesome. Thank you. Cherie?
Yeah. I think if you think back to, did you say 15 or 16 or something, right?
That's what I said, but I think I just...
Yeah. I just think that particular age, it's just really not easy. Like we are so critical of ourselves and we don't have the crystal ball. So you know, I think back then I definitely thought, I didn't know at the time that I was autistic. My dad didn't know he was autistic, you know, and I did honestly spend most of my life wondering, why am I so weird? Why can't I be like other people? Why do I have to scale a cliff face of the Blue Mountains looking for a particular cicada, you know? And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And yeah, I used to sort of probably beat myself up a little bit, like that angsty sort of, you know, 15 to 16-year-old girl. But now I wish 15 to 16-year-old me knew that you're going to be living in this particular year, 2022, and it was much before this, but like there's a revenge of the nerds era. So, you know, all of the times that you were just so uncool at school, it didn't matter, you know. What is cool anyway? And now I feel like weirdos are having the best time. We're living our best lives at the moment. Like, it is really revenge of the nerds. And I'm so glad I stuck it out as my weird little self, you know, during school, and just honored that weirdo. And, you know, I just think that, you know, yeah, now I love the person, you know, that I am. And these days, as an organizational leader, I think, you know, I try to tell myself a lot. There's this particular quote, I know I'll quote it wrong, but it's something along the lines of, you know, if you continue to worry about what every single person thinks about you, you've lost control of your life. You're not actually in any degree of control of your life, you know. And that was so liberating, because, you know, the work that I do, I get a lot of criticism from externals, and, you know, and so on. And if I kept myself awake every single night worrying about, you know, what other people think, I don't think I'd feel like I was in control of my own life. And I like to be in control, you know. So yeah, that would be the two pieces of, you know, sort of, I guess that's all I could touch on for tonight. Just celebrate your weird and stop worrying about what everyone else thinks. Yeah.
I think that any woman who can stand up and say, I love who I am, is on such a winner. And I think that is just the best thing ever. Seriously, you ride that wave, girl. Fantastic. I love it.
We all should. Like, why not? You know, you only get one life. So
I've heard this. Liz.
Yeah, look, for me, I would probably actually echo what's been said already, but maybe in a slightly different context. So I think it is about celebrating your difference. Like, you know, I'm sitting here in a very colourful dress, and I spent many years trying to dress practically like a man, right? I was working in manufacturing sites, wearing my steel cap boots with no jewelry on, no makeup, with my hair tied up, right? And the messages that I got sent was, that's how you be successful. And now I'm all about, like, no, if I'm in the office, I'm in the loudest thing that I can find in my wardrobe, right? And I think it is about, you know, being yourself. And I heard somebody say recently that, you know, when you are your true self, you are your best self. You are at an 11 when you are just yourself. So let's all try and just be ourselves.
I think that's fantastic. I love that. Audience, we would love to hear if you've got any additional questions to put to our amazing panel. I've already got so many different things that I have learned from these women that I'm going to be taking with me. But I did see that there was a question about programming that Alex had answered about what she programs in. You were a programmer once upon a time. What is it that you programmed in, young Liz?
Gosh, lots of things. A bit of Python. Scala was in vogue. Lots of Java. C before that. That's showing my age.
I went. So what people don't know a lot about me is that I actually have an information technology degree.
You're qualified.
Apparently, put me up for partnership. But in the meantime, I learnt COBOL.
Nice. Still going strong.
I don't know where, but apparently it is. Yes. Oh, hilarious. Okay, I think I saw a question come through. So I had Eliza has said to us, what is one situation in your career that was a huge setback, and how did you overcome that? So Liz, you're on my screen, so I'm going to throw to you to start with.
Yeah, look, my brain is scanning for a particular example, but I think one of the things that I would say about the feedback that you get is that people come from a place of recommending what helped them, right? Which is not necessarily what's going to be helpful for you. So I would say the things that probably set me back the most were advice to behave in a particular way, which frankly was not my style, or was never going to make me successful because I would be mimicking somebody else's style. So I think you get better at knowing what works for you and what doesn't over time, obviously, and you get better at sort of filtering different points of feedback. But I would say, after big presentations, for example, when I was much younger, you get that little comment at the end and your confidence just gets blown for a little while, that sort of thing.
So, young Sheree, I'm sure you must have a story or two about something that was a setback when you were starting the digital picnic.
Oh, many. I mean, just starting with startups are so full on. But honestly, I would feel guilty to talk about doing it hard as a startup when, I recognize my privilege. I had my husband's salary, although it was modest, I did have that to fall back on, so I won't talk about anything like that, but, it wasn't easy. And I was telling Mama Cats, before we kicked off this session tonight, there was one particular time where my little girl was a baby. My son was probably 3, and we couldn't afford baby wipes because we were just starting up a business, and it's, just so intense. And I come from a lower socioeconomic, background. So there was no mum or dad to kind of chip in some money here or there or whatever. So there were some really just humbling days, and I had to walk to the milk bar one time, and I'd scraped all my silvers, to try and afford baby wipes. And I was like 10 cents short, and the milk bar guy just let me off. And I was like, thank you so much. And I obviously paid him back when I was good for that 10 cents, but there were some really like humbling days, sort of back then. But now I guess setbacks that I can think of, and you touched on this so beautifully, Liz, but it's the criticism sometimes at the end that you're not expecting, so I've delivered particular programs to organizations where, and this doesn't sound as modest, but we've been paid sort of, $40,000 to hop into an organization and rewrite their strategy. And I think I just threatened this particular marketing manager, and I'm going to call it, he was a cis white male. And, he felt really threatened by me. And I just really wished that he hadn't, gone in with that approach. I wasn't the enemy. I was there to collaborate with them to make something that was already good a lot better. That's all it was, and we were paid, remunerated really well to be there. So I think we really deserved to be there. We were paid to be there. And it got to the end of that particular week, and we thought we'd made really great impacts, and we had, and at the end he pulled me aside and he said, I can't fault the delivery of everything, that you've brought to the table. He said, my only advice would be to hire a male to get more buy-in. And they were his exact words. And I was like, oh, no, you didn't. And I just looked at, those moments. I have a lot like slower, processing speed. So I mean, what I was thinking of responding with in the shower that night versus what I did in that moment were two very different things, but I just thought, no, just internally, I was like, you've been paid really well to be here. You deserve to have a place here. You delivered it well. He has admittedly even said he couldn't fault the particular delivery. He just needed you to have a penis, So if that's all that I was lacking, a particular genital, well, I slept very well that night. And, he was moved on. Because the strategy that we built, it sort of came to light that he probably wasn't delivering on, particular deliverables, not through my involvement at all, but just the strategy that got put together, So yeah, look, I wasn't sad to see that update on LinkedIn, but honestly, I just think even in those moments, like Liz touched on as well, you've just got to know, inside who you are and how you fit, and stop trying to fit other sort of things, because what he wanted from me, I literally couldn't deliver. I couldn't be another gender. And so, yeah, that was one of those moments where I was like, wow, can't believe you just said that literally out loud amongst all of your female colleagues and the team that you're meant to be mentoring.
Yeah, I dare say we've all encountered something like that along the way. Anyway. Alex, what advice would you give to international student graduates who are breaking into tech? What opportunities can they explore to break into tech in Australia?
Yeah, so I am not an international student, so I don't know a lot about international student spaces. But yeah, I just think that, you know, growing your skills as well as you can through, you know, what you're doing at your degree, making connections at society meetups and all of those kinds of things that I think I would recommend to almost anyone would be, you know, super, super useful. Yeah, so those kinds of things of like, just grow your skills, grow your community, find those people that can support you, that can, you know, hold you up. And even when, you know, you've got those days where you feel like I have nothing to give and I'm worthless, and you can have those people to fall back on and say, nah, you've got this. Yeah, find those people, find your tribe of people that are like your people. Yeah, and that'll get you through a lot, I think.
And I dare say, if I could add, network.
Yeah.
Network. I've been very fortunate throughout my career that my networks have supported me when I started my own business. It's my networks that held me up. And I think that it's really important to learn to network and to build your network. We, at our conference last year, I sponsored a few girls from my daughter's school to come along, and I do it every year. And there were twins, year 11 girls, who by the end of that conference had managed to connect on LinkedIn to every single person they met. No issue. Hi, my name's so-and-so. Really nice to meet you. What do you do? And they were seeking advice from every person, no matter who they were. Pretty sure one of them was talking to a waiter at one point. Didn't care. Still collected that information, still networked. And they've got, you know, more connections than a lot of people who've been in industry for years. Networks are everything, in my humble opinion. Liz, how do you overcome imposter syndrome when you make a career change to a technical role when you don't have proven technical experience?
Yeah, great question. And look, it's actually a really fulfilling experience, right? Because you come out on the other side of it and you go like, wow, I did that. That's awesome. So for me, making the transition from day-to-day being an aerospace engineer to day-to-day being a software developer, that was a lot of reading, nighttime mucking around on my own, pair programming with anybody that would pair program with me, you know, asking lots of questions, etc. So I think you've just got to be super curious and study hard and try and add value however you can add value, be that just being the person who's better at typing or something like that. But, you know, I think the mountain to climb is often seems steeper at the beginning. And I think you, going back to what we were saying earlier, you realize that you do have skills that you can translate, or you're good at picking up patterns because that's how your brain's been working for years and that sort of thing. So yeah, just apply yourself, go all in.
That's exactly right. I think that's been a bit of a theme about going all in from all of you. Young Cherie.
And young Frankie.
Hello, Frankie. Oh, hi, Frankie. Hi, Sandy.
Just having my own little Professor Kelly moment. It's all good.
Oh, exciting to see you. What is the one thing that women can do today to take up space?
Well, we've got it literally happening here in my background, but just be unapologetic, you know, and I think the best way to take up space is to just, you know, keep getting educated. I'm not talking about that really privileged, you know, particular bachelor degree and so on, but just, you know, getting educated about you as a person, explore everything about you, your personality type. For me, it's my neurodivergency. You know, even things like recognizing I'm an introvert, you know, so once I realized that, it just, you know, I then knew that I didn't have to apologize to my friends for not wanting to catch up with them on a Sunday when I'd only seen them a week before. I'm like, oh, we still recharging here, my friends, you know, and so it's just nice to feel like I don't have to apologize, you know, for just being me and authentically me. So taking up space for me just feels like spending this one life that we get to live, educating myself on myself as much as I possibly can so that I can be a better wife, better mother, better friend, better daughter, better organizational leader, you know, and so on. So yeah, be fascinated by yourself, be fascinated by people around you, and subsequently take up space.
Fantastic. We've got a question of, and I'm not quite sure. I'm going to see if any of you jump in. Have you ever experienced a gender pay gap, and how did you handle it? I guess the first thing is knowing that you did. Have any of you sort of aware that that's ever happened to you?
Yes. I'm sure other people have had this experience as well. Became aware of it because there was a holy shit, we must correct the gender pay gap problem in one of the businesses that I was working in, which led to us doing a whole bunch of analysis and subsequently me getting a substantial pay rise as an outcome of that, which indicated to me that there was something that needed to be redressed there. And annoyingly, it's not historical. So the unfortunate thing is that those sorts of biases creep in every single time that there's pay reviews. So your organisation needs to have processes to be able to look at that intentionally as part of their regular processes. And I am grateful that I think that's more common than not these days, that does happen. But certainly it's a punch in the guts, isn't it, to think that you've been working for less reward than some of your counterparts. Absolutely.
Very much so. It's something that I'm afraid we're going to be battling for a little while longer, but at least we're battling it now. We're not just saying that's okay. And I think that's part of how we've shifted the dial. We're saying it's not good enough anymore. And we're voting with our feet. And as someone who works with, in the space where I help people find jobs and place them in them, right now, as a woman in technology, the world is your oyster. If you're not happy and you don't like it, you have a choice. You really have a choice. The number of times that I've had someone say to me, Karen, if you could make that one a female hire, it's like, yeah, I'll just pull 5 of them out from under the desk. They're all waiting there for you. No problem. Anyway, we're being asked if there are any tips on how to handle gaining experience, not just working or paid experience, in order to break into an industry, and have just one person believe in your abilities. Any advice on that?
You want me to speak?
Yes, if you've got the advice, if you have the advice.
I mean, I don't know if I have the advice, but I know the person who's asked this question, and I've been scoping for TDP internal hires for a while. So, so just don't be afraid to maybe just smash out 12 months in not even entry level, but like I'm talking like for us, it's coordination. So 12 months in coordination in the world, the TDP world, would be your oyster. We just love to see someone not afraid to do 12 months in coordination when it can branch so beautifully into strategy. That's our typical progression. So if you're having a struggle coming up, like, hitting a particular position, ask that company for the job descriptions of, a particular role that you're interested in, maybe the one that would be considered slightly below and the one above that, so you can be crystal clear on what would be required, to hit there, maybe just one tier down and also one above, and to speak to the pay gaps, with our JDs, we give salary bandwidths as well, and we share it with all of our internal employees as well as external as well, so that you're so crystal clear on what your counterparts, not exactly on, but at least a bandwidth. And so there shouldn't be, any surprises. So I don't know, I just feel like I wish I could tell everyone, if you're struggling to gain experience in digital marketing, don't be afraid to smash out 6 to 12 months in coordination before you branch into strategy, because in the whole scheme of your life, what's 6 to 12 months, and for us, coordination is the perfect bridge to strategy, so yeah.
In Melbourne, that's like not even as long as we're in lockdown, really, if you think about it.
No, we've done longer lockdowns. Exactly.
That's a distant memory. Alex, any books that have inspired you along the way?
Yeah, so I popped one in the chat, Invisible Women. It's all good. Yeah, so I read it like a year ago, something like that, and it's just so data driven and so incredible. I say inspiring. It's inspiring in that kind of like gut wrenching way of like, yeah, the world is real shit, and that it really gets you. Anytime I recommend it to a friend, I'm like, you've got to be in the right headspace. Like you can't be having a down week and then read Invisible Women. Like you have to be having an okay time and then you can read Invisible Women. It's a little bit much on top of anything else. But yeah, it's an incredible read. I have given it to 3 different people to read. I'm like, read this book. Everyone should read this book. And if we all read this book, maybe we could make it better. And that's, I think, why I would count it as an inspiring book, even though it's not the typical like, oh, everything's going to be great kind of inspiring. It's the kind of like, no, you're deep in the mud, but let's get out of there kind of inspiring. So I really like it. Would rate.
Fantastic. Young Liz, in changing careers, has anyone had to navigate having to constantly justify, or have you had to navigate having to constantly justify your previous experience? Or have you got any advice on owning your experience as a benefit and not to your detriment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think your own story is yours, and it's useful to practice it all the time, right? And sometimes it doesn't work, right? Sometimes you give too much detail and you look like you're talking on something that's completely irrelevant. And I think it takes a bit to refine your story and to make it relevant for the group that you're involved with at the time. But I am 100% confident that you would find the way to emphasize the parts of your experience and the skills that you have in a way which is super relevant and interesting and engaging and helps people to understand that you are in the right room at the right time.
Fantastic. Thank you. Cherie, as an introvert, because you called it, you said you were, how do you handle the pressure when being compared to more extroverted, potentially male colleagues?
I think it's just, again, it probably ties back to what I was talking about before, so sorry. And that's, just really understanding yourself and how you work so that you can better highlight the strengths of introversion, because there are so many, I know it feels like we're playing in an extrovert's world, but there is such a place for introverts as well, and so once you start to really unpack what introversion really looks like and how that sort of plays out professionally speaking, then you can lean into the introverted strengths and not compare yourself to extrovert sort of strengths and so on. We all honestly collectively have our strengths and weaknesses, but I really do believe in introversion as a strength. I love it so much. I can call out right now, if I were to interview today, if TDP closed tomorrow and I found myself in an interview setting, I would talk about how as an introvert and as an organizational leader, I just never make knee-jerk decisions. I can't. It's not true to that introvert sort of personality type. And so, my employees really benefit from a 24 to 48 hour sort of processing speed where I sit in that quiet introversion, I reflect, and I subsequently I arrive at much better sort of decisions. It doesn't always work that way. Of course, some things need a quicker response time, but there are so many things that I can talk about that sort of lean into that more introverted sort of set of strengths, and I just honor those, and I don't even compare to the extroverted strengths. No point. I'm not going to be that. Yeah,
I think that's awesome, and it's actually interesting. I've got 2 teenage girls. There they are. And I have one exceptionally extroverted one and one exceptionally introverted one. And it's really interesting to sort of just see how they will handle a situation. Extrovert just bursts into the room. I'm ready. I'm here. I'm going. I'm doing it. Whereas my introverted child will stop. She's going to assess the room. She's going to sort of have a really good think about it and almost prepare herself just that little bit better for how it is that she's going to address and deal with the situation. And it's interesting because I'm just like the extrovert. And I think I've learned over time with age that, to stop and assess just a little bit. Whereas, my 19-year-old just bursts, she's in, she's there, it's happening. That's all there is to it.
And that's a beautiful thing as well,
Absolutely. And, and that's celebrating the differences within my family and certainly within the world. We could talk for hours and hours and hours, but I think we need to actually wind it up. We're actually gone over time already. And my dogs are barking in the background going, Mum, feed me. I would love to thank these incredible women for joining me. Alex McCulloch, Cherie Clonan, and Liz Douglas. They have enlightened, certainly I've been enlightened tonight, and I hope you guys have too. Conference tickets are now 10% off on our final early bird. May 18, I hope to see so many of you either in person or online at conference. Don't forget to share your wine, your cheese, or your learnings under the socials under hashtag #GirlBossNight or hashtag GirlsInTechAU to win a conference ticket, which I'm going to be very excited to announce later. And hopefully I'll see you all there. Ladies, if you'll stay on for a few minutes, I'm going to say goodbye to our audience. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you've gotten as much out of tonight as certainly I have. Have a great night all. Hey, Frankie, say goodbye. Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.